So it is really a big pleasure for me to welcome everyone to this webinar on raising ambition through the partnership, which will be focusing on climate finance units and exploring their potential to improve the access, the management, and very importantly, the impact of climate finance, one of the key priorities for countries across the globe. So before we get started, I would like to share some housekeeping. So you can join the webinar in 3 different languages: English, French, or Spanish, based on your preference. So for that, there is a globe icon that you can see here on the right side of the screen. You can click on that, select the language that you prefer to use. Of course, if you are planning to transition to French or Spanish, if you want to listen in English, there is nothing to be done. So then you click on the preferred option if you want to shift it to French or Spanish, and please click on unmute original audio during the presentation. Mute original audio, sorry, so that then you can don't have 2 channels of audio coming into your microphone. So next slide, please. We would encourage everyone to use the chat during the function. And the first invitation is for colleagues to share in the chat their name, organization, or country and title. And throughout the webinar, also for exchanges. If you have specific questions to the speakers, please use the Q&A function, which you also can see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we'll be monitoring and either bringing that to the discussion or responding directly through the Q&A. So we'll be sharing all the presentation and the resources that are that you will be seeing today and it will be mentioned today. And also we'll be recording, or we're already recording this session as it will be available in the partnership YouTube channel for a wider consumption later on. Before we dive into the specific of today's session, I would like to highlight that we have 3 additional sessions that the partnership is organizing this month. So on the 20th of March, we'll be having a session on strengthening social protection in NDCs. On the 25th, we have one on integrating just transition in NDCs. And on the 27th, we are going to have a technical session focused on fossil fuel phase out with the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. So we'll be sharing the links to register to this session also in the chat in case you are interested. So next slide. To frame the discussion, I would just share a little bit about the partnership, also about this work, the Taskforce and the Center for the Taskforce, which is supporting this work. And then turn to my colleague who will be diving into the specifics of what we've learned through this climate finance unit's policy brief and work. So starting with the partnership is a coalition of developed and developing countries and international institutions that came together in the aftermath of the Paris Agreement to support the delivery of the Paris Agreement and in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. So we are currently at 240 members, including 130 developed and developing countries and 100 institutions, including a wide range of UN agencies, multilateral development banks, non-government affiliated organizations, and other institutions that are working and supporting development and climate action across the globe. So through the partnership, member countries can communicate their priorities and needs. And based on that, the partnership delivers a coordinated package of technical and financial support. And to date, we have supported 100 developing countries that are actively engaged with our work. Also, through the partnership, we work on collecting, distilling, and disseminating knowledge and learning from across our membership, from our partners, from our countries. And this work is very much related to that part of our work. I think unsurprisingly for most of us here in this call and for everyone working on climate, finance is the most requested topic coming from our developing countries. And to date, we had the pleasure to support 85 countries through 170 partners on several elements, ranging from developing climate finance strategies and investment plans, integrating climate into core planning, budgeting, and financial instruments of countries, developing investable projects and programs, and supporting the mobilization of finance for those, including close engagement with the private sector throughout the entire process. To also, based on this work that the partnership had over the 8 years, we have also put together what we call a climate investment planning and mobilization framework, what we developed together with the GCF and based on the experiences of countries and partners. And that's meant to support countries in navigating the process from their NDCs, their NAPs, their long-term strategies, all the way to the investments in a coordinated manner. And the discussion today has a very strong connection to that with one component of that work, and we'll speak a little bit more about that later on. Also, very importantly, since just June last year, the partnership is hosting the Secretariat and the Knowledge Center of the Taskforce for Access to Climate Finance, which is a global initiative created to improve the access to climate finance for climate vulnerable developing countries, which is co-chaired and supported by the UK and Rwanda, and is focused on developing and piloting innovative approaches that improve access to climate finance at the country level, but also influence and promote changes at the system level. And we are very pleased that the work today is commissioned and supported by the task force. So talking a little bit about the webinar today. So the webinar is bringing across the results of the policy brief that we launched last year, so on the climate finance units. And this stemmed from a very strong interest from countries in setting up climate finance units to improve the access management and the impact of climate finance. And the observation that while we had a lot of countries focus on setting up climate finance units, we already had several countries that had already those in place and had gone through that journey. So the focus of this work was to learn about this process so that we can get key elements that could inform the wider global community when advancing on this type of discussions. I think some important points. We all know how complex climate action can be because it's something that cuts across all the sectors of the economy, many government institutions, and many different stakeholders. And also at the same time, a very complex and fragmented climate finance architecture. And in that context, climate finance units play a very important role as it supports stakeholder engagement and improve coordination across government, between government institutions and development partners, and also with financiers. So creating more consistency and alignment across actions in terms of mobilizing financial resources from public and private sources. It also plays a very important role in terms of integrating climate action into national planning and aligning climate and development, something we know is an imperative for political buy-in, but also for successful implementation of climate interventions. It can increase also the efficiency, responsiveness, and impact of projects and programs through this broader integration and stronger coordination. And also very important and a critical area of need from our member countries, it helps to build in-country capacities to better access, manage, and deploy climate finance. I would really like to thank many of the partners and countries who provided input to this work. So this is a collective result. We were basically compiling, learning from many of you and putting this together in the climate finance unit, but expertise, the knowledge, the experiences come from our member countries and from partners that joined this effort. And in special, I would like to thank Uganda, Bangladesh, UK, Belgium, and the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action for being with us today and for sharing their views and their experience. And also a special thanks for Climate Analytics, who supported the development of this policy brief that we're presenting. So with that, I think this year is a critical year for many reasons. It's the year of the new round of NDCs. It's also the year of many geopolitical challenges we are seeing across the globe. So the importance of coordination, of working together, of aligning efforts has never been more important. So we are very, very much looking forward for this discussion, for learning from all of you. And as a partnership, we stand very committed to supporting our member countries in driving their climate and development priorities. Thank you very much again for joining us today. And with that, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Usman Khan, who will be presenting some of the key insights of the policy brief before we go into a panel discussion with experts that will be diving into more specific elements and fleshing out their experiences and insights for a broader community. Thank you very much, and over to you, Usman.
Thanks very much, and welcome to all. Thanks for making time to join this webinar. I'll be providing a brief overview of our policy brief. So to link with the opening remarks, again, I just want to emphasize that countries need finance, that their focus is shifting from developing to implementing climate-related plans. So that's NDCs, LT-LEDs, and NAPs. We also know that the scale of finance that's needed is significant. Estimates are suggesting that emerging markets and developing countries are going to need annual investment of $2.4 trillion by 2030 to meet climate goals. Now, to give you a sense of the financing gap, that's 4 times what's currently invested. We do expect that the amount of climate finance will increase over time, but beyond increasing scale, we have to ensure that there's greater ease and access to this finance. And robust institutional frameworks that accelerate the access and management of climate finance is going to be key. In the absence of this, countries face the risk of inefficient financial flows, duplicative efforts, and misalignment with national climate and development goals. Climate finance units, which are referred to as CFUs going forward, can offer an institutional framework whereby countries are better positioned to identify, prioritize, and develop investment-ready projects to attract larger volumes of climate finance. As already mentioned, the policy brief we've developed draws on extensive literature and consultations. This is including representatives from CFUs, development partners, climate finance initiatives, and the private sector, highlighting the importance of setting up CFUs for enhanced climate action and outlining best practices and success stories. And so, what are the key rationale for establishing CFUs? We find that they enable countries to centralize efforts to access, coordinate, and manage climate finance. We know that CFUs can enhance national financial and budgetary processes by supporting the development of climate-aligned budgets. They can promote a unified approach to resource mobilization by strengthening interministerial and cross-sectoral coordination. And on this point of resource mobilization, we know that climate finance comes from a range of sources, and accessing these different streams of finance and appropriately channeling them requires specialized capacity. A CFU can address this by acting as a dedicated focal point for climate finance. Lastly, bringing everything together, CFUs are better able to navigate the complexity of climate finance, which can often be characterized as being slow, fragmented, and bureaucratic in nature. There are several common functions that are performed by CFUs. Now, these are going to vary depending on national contexts, but generally speaking, they look to do the following. Firstly, they mobilize and coordinate climate finance. This could be considered the primary function of a CFU. They're often involved in developing and implementing climate finance strategies, and as focal points for climate finance, they can also strengthen whole of government and whole of society approaches, simplifying and coordinating interactions between government and other actors. And this positioning allows them to integrate climate ambition into national development processes, ensuring that climate projects are both adequately funded and aligned with national development goals. On this point of alignment with national development goals, CFUs can contribute to an environment in which climate resilience and low carbon development becomes integral to economic planning. This mainstreaming of climate considerations can be achieved by embedding climate objectives within, for example, fiscal policy, taxation systems, and national budgeting processes, which in turn can mean improved resourcing and political support for transformational climate action. Related to the first point on mobilizing finance, CFUs often play crucial roles in supporting the development of projects and proposals. Often, they do this by acting as intermediaries between national government and climate finance providers. Next, despite only emerging relatively recently, CFUs are increasingly seen as crucial in mainstreaming gender equality and social inclusion in climate finance activities. We know that climate change disproportionately impacts vulnerable populations, including women, local communities, and indigenous people. CFUs can play a role here by promoting inclusivity by integrating these considerations into relevant strategies and plans. Lastly, CFUs perform a vital function in supporting capacity building and institutional strengthening. This can come in the form of training and technical support provided to government, both at national and subnational levels, to civil society, and to private sector actors. This enables them to effectively engage in climate finance mechanisms and strengthens the overall climate finance ecosystem, improving the ability of stakeholders to develop, implement, and evaluate climate projects. Looking ahead, CFUs are expected to take on expanded roles as countries strive to meet more ambitious climate commitments and mobilize private sector capital at scale. It's also important to note that there's a rising demand for programmatic approaches to meet climate goals. And here, I'd like to draw attention to the Climate Investment Planning and Mobilization Framework, which was mentioned earlier, co-developed by the Partnership and the GCF. The framework is a non-prescriptive guide that brings together the collective experience of climate investment planning and mobilization. And its purpose is to provide a common reference point and language for countries and climate finance providers to navigate the steps involved in moving from planning to implementation. CFUs, as coordinating bodies for climate investment and mobilization, can use this framework as a blueprint to strengthen what we refer to as upstream processes. So here I'm talking about enabling environments, prioritization and development of investments and financial strategies, and downstream processes, which is essentially the mobilization of finance and investments. At the top of the presentation, I noted that countries will require annual investment of $2.4 trillion by 2030. Around 1 trillion of these funds per year is going to need to come from international sources of finance. And CFUs, in their roles as mobilizers of finance, often collaborate with external partners to get support for their own efforts. Now, this can include collaboration in the areas of capacity building, policy development, resource mobilization, project implementation, and coordination and collaboration. External partners play an important role throughout. And I've highlighted a couple of examples on the right-hand side, which speak to support at various stages of a CFU's development. Right from the outset, CFUs typically need early-stage financial and operational support. This tends to form the bulk of upfront costs. As we see the CFU become operational, it'll need to be well-staffed and capacitated. And partners here can support by deploying embedded experts, providing training programs to staff, and facilitating knowledge exchanges between CFUs. And this can be coupled with additional technical assistance to support the development of relevant strategies and plans, building monitoring and reporting systems, and managing relationships across ministries and with climate finance providers. Up to this point, I've tried to outline how establishing CFUs can provide significant opportunities to strengthen the climate finance ecosystem of countries. But I should note that these opportunities come with their fair share of challenges, and these challenges require strategic management to ensure that a CFU's mandate is executed effectively in the long run. I'll run through a few factors that should be considered. Firstly, countries may have challenges of having multifaceted and conflicting mandates, whereby multiple government institutions have responsibilities for various climate action interventions. By illustration, a common example we've seen is where focal points for multilateral climate funds, so here I'm predominantly speaking about the GEF, the Adaptation Fund, and the GCF, are housed in different entities than the one responsible for climate finance coordination. This can potentially result in duplication of resources and efforts. And so with this in mind, the scope and mandate of the CFU should be clearly and carefully defined to avoid such challenges. Next, securing consistent political backing is crucial. Integrating CFUs into national governance structures is one approach to achieve this. We find that CFUs that have a mandate that's derived from or that reports to top-level decision makers are more likely to receive the attention, support, and resourcing necessary to effectively realize their objectives and functions. Now, this could take the form of a CFU integrated within a Ministry of Finance, which is what we commonly see, but equally, we could see it embedded under the President's office or the Prime Minister's office, or even as a standalone entity. Ultimately, this is going to be informed by national circumstances. On the point of political backing, CFUs should strengthen institutional capacities to withstand political changes. By establishing transparent governance frameworks, which clarify operational processes and that support CFUs institutionalization, we can see political backing being secured. Another factor that can hinder effectiveness is technical capacity. Now, this could refer to inadequate staffing or existing teams lacking specific technical expertise to navigate either the climate or finance landscape. Staffing gaps are often addressed by bringing in external advisors, but this reliance may not be sustainable in the long run. And so one way we've seen this being addressed is by embedding individuals with technical expertise from key sectors within the CFU. Early integration of these ministerial representatives into CFUs as staff or secondees also enhances legitimacy within key stakeholder groups. It can lead to better staff retention and minimize loss of institutional capacity. Lastly, financial sustainability is always going to be a key concern for CFUs, as many rely on short-term external funding during their initial phases. Transition plans hold potential for enhancing financial sustainability by providing forward-looking information on how CFUs will move away from initial grants and donor support. And even with a view to move beyond government budgetary support, CFUs can explore other cost recovery models to diversify their funding sources. This can include tapping into the private sector and innovative financing instruments. I'm now coming to a close, but I'm hoping that there are people in the audience that have an active interest in designing, establishing, or operationalizing climate finance units. As part of the policy brief, we developed a step-by-step guide, as shown on the slide, which summarizes the general phases and steps in doing this. This guide was informed by the journeys of the various CFUs that were supported as part of this brief. What's important to note is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to establishing CFUs. Countries have to consider their circumstances, whether it's their climate context or governance system, when tailoring mandates and institutional arrangements. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. I hope this presentation has provided some valuable insights. I'd invite you to read our policy brief if you'd be interested in further information. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Esther, who will facilitate the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Usman. I would like to introduce now our panelists. We have an amazing panel today with very experienced experts. We have 4 panelists who joined us today and will introduce and give us different perspectives regarding CFUs. They all have extensive experience already working with CFUs. So one panelist is Mr. Dennis Mugaga, head of the Climate Finance Unit, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development in Uganda. Dennis has an extensive experience, particularly in mobilizing external finance, working together with the GEF, the GCF, and the Adaptation Fund. We have here today in our panel also Mr. Akam Sohel, Additional Secretary and Wing Chief, Economic Relations Divisions, Ministry of Finance, People's Republic of Bangladesh. We have with us today Mr. Adrian Tas, Senior Climate Advisor at the Belgian Development Agency. For the past 4 years, Adrian worked as an embedded advisor in the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Mozambique, and among other things was involved also in the establishment of the CFU in Mozambique. And we have in our panel also Ms. Ife Fleming. Ife is working for the Ministry of Finance of the Netherlands and is also the policy advisor to the Netherlands co-chair of the Coalition of the Finance Ministers of Climate Action. I also see there are already many questions coming, and there are also some hands up. These are all well noted, and after the panel discussion, we will also have the opportunity to give you the floor and ask those questions. But meanwhile, we will also try to answer them in the question pane. So many thanks for your active participation in our webinar. But now turning to our panelists, starting with focusing on the establishment of the CFUs and also what's the rationale of establishing a CFU. First, I'm turning to you, Dennis. Could you please share with us the experience of Uganda? What were the key drivers in Uganda that informed your country's decision to establish a CFU?
Thank you so much, Esther, and thank you so much for inviting Uganda to share during this very important webinar, focusing on creation of climate finance units as a model to drive climate finance ambition. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yeah, the audio is not great. We can hear you, but indeed the line is not the best.
How is that now?
I think it's slightly better. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So for Uganda, I can say we had a number of drivers why we made a decision to set up the climate finance unit in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Development. And one of them was looking at our NDCs, our updated NDC, highlighted that we need to mobilize 28.1 billion over a period of 7 years. If you do the math, that means we were supposed to mobilize 4.1 billion annually. To give you a background, in our last, before the NDCs, we are mobilizing close to $350 million annually. So having a target of 4.1 annually was a big task. So the Ministry of Finance thought it wise to have a dedicated team that is going to, on a daily, think about climate financing, how best to mobilize resources, how best to be innovative. And so that ambition of mobilization drove us to have this climate finance unit. And the other thing that we also looked at was even when the resources were mobilized, the adoption and effectiveness of this financing was really not to the task. And as you know, implementation drives mobilization. So we needed to have a unit and a team that would help build capacity of or raise financing for building capacity of the other agencies to make sure that we have the best projects and also implement the best actions as highlighted in our NDCs. And we also had a drive, because most of the resources that we're looking at were not only coming from the external side. If you look at our budget currently, I think half of it is actually coming from our own resources, our own revenues. So clearly having ways of including and integrating climate financing in our development planning was also another driver. So the best way to do that was basically to have a team that is going to coordinate the inclusion of climate financing and climate action in all our existing budgets. And that is why we are actually undertaking currently the climate budget tagging, to make sure that we clearly know how much of this financing is actually coming from external resources or from our own resources at every spending unit. So those three actually were the drivers. And we also had seen that other countries were actually benefiting from creation of these funds. We had actually, we went to Rwanda and Kenya to understand how is it helping them mobilize resources. And that also helped us to engage our partners, the UK, who under the Taskforce on Active Climate Finance, to have this as our ask to the task force to set up the unit to increase mobilization of climate financing and increase also ultimately climate action in Uganda. I hope that answers the question. Thank you. Esther.
Many thanks, Dennis. Let's go now to Asia. Let's go to Bangladesh. I'm turning to you, Mr. Sohel. If you could share with us your experience and what were the drives and the rationale in Bangladesh to develop new institutional structures and processes to establish the International Climate Finance Cell.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, we are one of the most vulnerable country indeed. And the climate financing gap is huge, as usual, for all other vulnerable countries. Ministry of Finance Economic Relations Division, specially assigned for foreign financing. All sort of foreign financing for the government, we deal with that. We have 10 wings, say World Bank wing, say ADB wing, so different Asia, Europe, different wings. But we found that there is no coordination for climate financing, even among us. But we have the climate policies to implement. The money is very precious, and we have to ensure the value for money, no overlapping. So that was the rationale. In 2022, we developed the International Climate Finance Cell in ERD, consisting of 10 members. I mean, all the other wings are the member of International Climate Finance Cell. So that other development partners, whoever wants to take any climate or assisting us for climate financing, International Climate Finance Cell gets the notification that, say, World Bank is going to take a project, or ADB is assisting us, or the Nordic countries are assisting us. So things are, we are notified. By this time, one question is already there, that is how to integrate. Yes, that is the main thing. We made two institutions. One is International Climate Finance Cell, and another is BCDP. BCDP is Bangladesh Climate Development Platform. The climate, climate is a cross-cutting issue for globally for all the countries. That's why we developed the platform under the leadership of the Prime Minister's Office. Principal Secretary is the chair, and 12 other ministries secretary. I mean the those ministries who are basically linked with climate finance and spending and materializing. I mean the implementing. They are the member. And the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forest, they are the member secretary. So whatever the climate change projects, government or the development partners with the assistance, whoever wants to take, it has to go through that climate development platform. Interesting thing is, all the development partners are also the member of that platform, that board. So that is the bridging platform. So the development
Mr. Sohel?
helpful to integrate the things. That is our point. So our experience is fantastic, especially overlapping issues are no more here. And development partners can get the assistance, the information that in, say, biodiversity. In this area, which development partners are working and what sort of projects are running, maybe from the government fund or with the blending finance or the both. So the information is there, the better coordination is there, no overlapping is there. So I request you can consider other climate vulnerable countries. You can consider our process, our platform, and it has been developed by the assistance of Asian Development Bank. Bangladesh, International Climate Finance Cell, and the Asian Development Bank. So if you need any other assistance or any other information and questions using this platform, I would like to say that please feel free to contact us. I'm just dropping my email address right at this moment, so you can text us so that we can share our experience if you want to implement that in your country. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Sohel. And this is indeed one of the goal of this webinar today, to generate a discussion, to connect you and also other countries. So many thanks for offering, reaching out to you and sharing further experience. Now, speaking a bit about the structure, the institutional background, where is the best to place a CFU? So as also Usman mentioned in the presentation, there is no one solution. It really depends a lot of the country's context that you have to consider, and your institutional structures and setup. In Uganda, the CFU is placed in the Ministries of Finance, and as Usman also said, this is the case most of the times. So just to hear a bit from you, Dennis, again, what was your rationale to put the CFU, to establish the CFU in the Ministry of Finance? What are the benefits of such an institutional setup? How do you see it?
Thank you so much once again. In Uganda, we have a structure that has actually guided the placement of the climate finance unit. Now, the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development of Uganda leads on public finance management. So in essence, we are responsible for fiscal policy, budgeting, and then financial oversight. So under our Public Finance Management Act, the responsibility to mobilize resources on behalf of government of Uganda and to attract and receive either grant financing or loan financing lies under the Minister of Finance. So if you look at the outfit of climate financing on the external side, basically all the responsibilities fall under the Ministry of Finance according to our laws and regulations. And so it was so easy for us to decide that this unit should be under the Ministry of Finance. And in its outfit, it's the Climate Finance Unit. So it's not Climate Action Unit. So the action is in the other agencies like the Ministry of Water and Environment, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, and then the Ministry of Agriculture, and then the others. So the other thing that we also have, and I know even in other countries, ministries of finance have that convening power. We have that coordination role because we don't implement anything. We actually have the mandate to look after all the other agencies. And if it comes to financing, financing is to everyone for climate action. So housing it in an implementing agency would bring issues to do with a situation where the Ministry of Energy would be going to the Ministry of Water and Environment to seek for financing for climate action. So it has that coordination role. So you need a neutral party, which the Ministry of Finance undertakes in Uganda. So we actually have that convening power. We talk to development partners. We talk to civil society. We talk to private sector. We talk to faith-based organizations when it comes to financing. So that is the other. Then also housing the Ministry of the Climate Finance Unit in the Ministry of Finance brings in the governance factor. In Uganda, when you look at, apart from the other agencies that look at accountability, the first agency to ensure accountability of resources and tracking and reporting is when it comes to financing, is the Ministry of Finance in Uganda. So that governance requirement when it comes to climate financing, it's very key if we are mobilizing. Partners want, on the external side, partners want to see where the money is going. Is it used for its intended purposes? And when there are issues, the first ministry to ask is the Ministry of Finance. So basically, that drove us to position the CFU in the Ministry of Finance. So we think that by having it in the Ministry of Finance, we'll have better integration of climate finance in our national budgets and planning, fiscal planning. We also have strong credibility in engaging our international partners, the finance providers, and then also we also think that there will be increased capacity to leverage both public, private financing for climate action in Uganda. I hope that gives an answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dennis. We also spoke about that as there is no one size fits to all, and the CFUs are placed in different ministries. They have different institutional setup. They have different mandates. They also have their different functions, roles, and responsibilities. Dennis, you emphasized a lot the mandate to mobilize financing. Mr. Sohail, you mentioned a lot the integration and the coordination role the cell is playing. I was wondering if Mr. Soha, you would like to add or complement anything regarding the roles and the key functions the International Climate Finance Cell has in Bangladesh.
Thank you once again giving me the floor. Firstly, 3 targets we have from the International Climate Finance Cell. That is 3 things. Exploring the climate finance sources, number 1. And number 2 is the coordination of external financing windows, climate projects, sponsoring and delivering agencies. At the same time, third one is the capacity development. Our experience is we felt that climate finance gap is everywhere in the vulnerable countries. This is very common. At the same time, another thing is common, that is climate literacy gap in the government, in the corporate sector, in the business sector. Some people are very good in climate financing issues. They have a clear-cut conception, academic background, working experience. They are very few in numbers, but that will not serve the purpose. What we want to do, what we are doing, that is, we have created a horizontal exponential expansion of climate financing knowledge base. Say, many ministries, we found that 1 or 2 officers, they understand the climate financing issue better. But no, if that officer is posted, transferred from other ministries, then what will happen? The knowledge gap will be there. So that's why we have taken the initiative, all-out initiative, that every ministry, there must be minimum 10 officers has to be trained properly, that they will understand the climate financing issue. If they are transferred, they will carry the climate financing with them, knowledge. There will be no knowledge gap. Another thing is, we are trying to accumulate, the academia, the civil societies, the NGO officials, the private sector. Say, I would like to cite, if you permit, I can cite one initiative recently taken, that very innovative initiative, that is, capital market instruments for climate financing. Say bonds, say equity investment, say guarantees. These are very important issues, areas. But we found that regarding the capital market, 90% civil servants, they don't understand the capital market instruments. So to reduce the knowledge gap, what we started, that in the online, we started a course. Because most of the training programs are failed because of some people, some trainees, you will find that their knowledge is high, they know everything. Many trainees will know nothing. So this heterogeneous knowledge base, uneven knowledge base, is not good for any training program. That's why we are inviting all the interested participants to register online. We'll take online courses to reduce. We'll try to give them the basic literacy first, and we'll take 3 exams minimum. After that, 50 top scorer will be selected for physical engagement, rigorous training. So we'll get 50 top class officers. At the same time, in course of the online courses, there will be a great achievement. It will also be very impactful to reduce the knowledge gap. So that is the way we are trying to do the things. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So you mentioned the importance of the skills and also the knowledge gap. And the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action, actually they developed a new self-assessment tool, which is called the Capability Assessment Framework for Mainstreaming Climate Action in Ministries of Finance. Aoife, can you speak a bit about the rationale and the objective of this tool and how this can support the CFU's capacity building efforts?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, from the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action, for the last 2 years, we've been very vocal on that finance ministries need to be a part of NDCs, national adaptation plans, long-term low emission development plans. And because through proactive engagement of finance ministries, it's possible to mobilize the finance and investment to actually implement these. So as we've heard from several speakers, to mobilize the finance to implement these plans, climate finance units can be a critical part in that. And we've also tried to support our members in who are increasingly establishing these units or developing these units, such as also incoming co-chair of the Coalition Uganda, as well as other members in providing the knowledge and the resources, as well as supporting peer learning to support our members. So that's why we developed in 2023, we developed our flagship guide, strengthening the role of finance ministries in driving climate action, where we have several case studies and a framework that sets out the critical role of finance ministries. And this ranges from finance ministries' mandates to developing climate strategies, establishing climate units, budget tagging, analytical tools, etc. And yeah, several of our members have reported being inspired by elements of the guide when taking climate action. And kind of as a follow-up to that, we're also updating the guide this year to make sure that this resource, that we have more case studies available so members can also engage in peer learning more, for example, on the topic of climate finance units. But as a follow-up to this guide, we are now developing a new self-assessment tool, the Capability Assessment Framework, which is designed to help our members to quickly take stock of their journey towards integrating climate action in their core functions, and to identify the necessary steps to further strengthen their capabilities for climate action. So we plan to fully launch this in 2025. This will also help us understand where our members are in their climate journey. We can connect members with capacity building support and technical assistance programs offered by our wide range of partners, and thereby enhancing our members' effectiveness in driving climate action. So yeah, we're also exploring strengthening partnerships, including with NDC Partnership and others, yeah, very much wanting to support our members in kind of the demands they're making. So I'll put the link to the guide in the chat as well. I think it's a really useful resource that shows yeah, what steps our members or ministries of finance can take to set up a climate finance unit.
Thank you, Aoife. I also see questions coming in the chat regarding the support of external partners, and we have here with us today in the panel Adrian Tass, representing the Belgian Development Agency, who is an external partner and supported a lot the establishment of the CFU in Mozambique, and also still supporting a lot the CFU there. So Adrian, can you speak a bit about what does this support mean, and to share a bit of insights about your work and collaboration with the ministry there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Esther, and thanks for having me on this panel. Thanks also for the great interventions from the other panelists already. Really interesting to be here today. So in terms of the support from Enable, the Belgian Development Agency, we actually started about 4 years ago working with the Ministry of Economy and Finance in Mozambique, and the intention was initially not to establish a climate finance unit, but it somehow grew organically out of the work that we were doing. And I'll try to summarize it in 3 phases, which resonate more or less with the phases that you've also presented in the policy brief. So the first step was really when Enable and the World Bank contracted embedded advisors under the umbrella of the NDC Partnership at the time to support the Ministry of Finance in Mozambique with some of its climate work. And it's actually through that day-to-day work and the day-to-day interaction that these embedded advisors had with colleagues in the ministry that you rapidly realize how important climate is for the work of the Ministry of Economy and Finance, and vice versa, how important the Ministry of Economy and Finance could be or is to promote climate action on the ground. And it's really like when you spend like a year or 2 years actively engaging with people that some of these needs start crystallizing and the topics start crystallizing. And that resonates a little bit with that first phase of assessing what are the needs, what are the objectives, what are the kind of topics that the Ministry of Economy and Finance can get involved in. And it's from that process really that at some point we started drafting a terms of reference on how the Ministry of Economy and Finance could organize itself institutionally in a more efficient and better way to start responding to those kind of topics. And it's really about things that have been mentioned before, like green budgeting, but also debt management, carbon markets, carbon pricing policies. I mean, these are all topics that come up on a day-to-day basis in ministries of finance. And you start thinking, okay, how can we as a ministry respond to that? And from that terms of reference, basically, then the next step, the next phase, and I think you also had that in your policy brief, was the institutionalization, like how do you formalize that? And there, as an external partner, I think there's not a big role. It's really very important, and I'm going to stress that, that the government itself and the ministry itself takes the lead in how to formalize such a unit, and there is no silver bullet approach to that. That has been mentioned many times. You really need to think about that. But in the case of Mozambique, it was really the political leadership of the ministry at the time, and we also had like a champion in the administration, Mr. Albano Manjata, who was leading this work on a technical level. But they ensured that the formalization took place in Mozambique. It was through a presidential decree that changed the mandate of the Ministry of Finance, and then the actual statutes of the ministry were also changed. And then after that, it was also the government and the ministry that has to think about human resources and etc. And I think all of that process was more or less concluded Q4 last year, and we're now moving towards the operationalization of the unit, which I believe was your 5th step. And there, what has been important, and first of all, as Enable, we also decided to continue supporting the Ministry of Finance under the new bilateral program. So we have also a bit more budget available. But I think what was very important was to create a clear activity plan. Because at this stage now also other partners are coming on board. There is FCDO, in fact, the European Union as well, Sweden, World Bank. But to coordinate this kind of support in a meaningful way, and maintain the government in the driver's seat, it is important to have a clear activity plan. And there we borrowed quite a bit from the guide that Aoife already mentioned, and I would recommend everybody to have a look at that because it gives some inspiration. Sometimes when you get a request from a partner is like, how can we support? It's difficult to imagine what could it be, but that guide is a really useful resource to get some inspiration. So that's more or less where we're at, and we're very much looking forward to continue the support in the coming years.
Many thanks, Adrian. Great to hear. And we focused a lot about the establishment and the rationale of CFUs. Let's speak a bit about their long-term sustainability, which is just equally important. So both regarding capacities and in a financial way. going again a bit back to Uganda. In Uganda, then is in the CFU, you have a mixed team of international and local experts. So you also benefited and still benefiting from external partner support there. But meanwhile, you also try to be less dependent of long-term of this international support, while your ambitions and the roles of the CFUs are growing. So how are you managing this? How this work? How do you see the long-term sustainability of the CFU, focusing on both capacities and financial terms?
Thank you so much. The CFU in Uganda, how we are looking at sustainability is, first of all, in the recruitment process of the officers that are under the unit, we tried to get officers that had at least 8 years and above when it comes to climate financing, some experience in climate financing. So we had a good starting point, because if you have officers that understand climate financing, then the building blocks are easier. When you bring in innovative financing mechanism, when you bring in, they actually can drive the innovation and also the capacity building for other agencies. But we also think that leveraging international expertise is also very key to long-term sustainability of the unit. Off record, I had a chance to discuss with one of the officers in the GCF and asked him, what is it that developing countries don't do that other countries do to access financing? And he told me that countries that access financing invest to get this financing, not in terms of corrupting the GCF officers, but they invest in human resource. They invest in consultants on this at the beginning to build capacity of the nationals to engage the GCF, for example, on a daily, to also develop bankable projects. So I thought that this was really a good model. And actually, that is what we are doing in Uganda. We have international experts, but the way we have structured this capacity building is knowledge transfer. So we actually currently working with colleagues from the German government to have 2 international experts embedded in the Ministry of Finance to work with agencies on project development, project implementation, and then on a daily. And the condition that we've given to these agencies to have at least 4 dedicated people working with these consultants every day. You know, it's not easy for you to work with someone for 2 years and not get something from it. So it will be easy to pass on the skills if these people are working with them on a daily. So we think that we can actually use the international expertise to also ensure that there's sustainability when it comes to the skill set. Then the fact that the CFU is actually led by basically by local expertise is also very key, because as we learn, if we, let's say this CFU was led by an international expert, it meant at one point this person would have to leave, and basically even the mobilization has an element of the leadership. So the fact that I've been, me as the head of the climate finance unit, have been in the ministry for a long time, gives me that leverage that actually I can engage partners, I can actually pass on the expertise to other Ugandans that are really going to take up the mantle when I leave. So it will be easy to pass on, even when I leave the CFU, it will be easy to pass on the expertise, because I am actually Ugandan and I'm working with Ugandans to pass on my leadership skills and also the information that I know, and coupled with the international expertise that we're working with, we think that there will be sustainability in this. Then I think the collaboration that we have with the different ministries, and also ensuring that the mandates don't clash, is also something that is going to help us, and also leverage the CFU's role. If you heard what I said, in terms of the mandate of the Ministry of Finance, we have that coordination role and capacity building when it comes to climate financing. But we've made it clear that the capacity needs for the different agencies on implementation is housed in the Ministry of Water and Environment. And that clear role helps us to work with the other agencies to pass on, to also propose the best ways to build our capacity. And ultimately, we know that in the next 5 years, I think Uganda will be somewhere. I also wanted to say something on the colleague from the coalition of finance ministers. We're happy that Uganda is coming in as the chair, the co-chair of the coalition. But I wanted to give some experience. When we had the last year in May, we had a meeting of the coalition in Uganda, and they were introducing the guide to Uganda, and the CFU presented basically what we are doing in the last 2 years. And if you look at the guide, we actually had done 80% of the guide. So I think that having a CFU in any country will actually make it so easy to adopt the guide that the coalition is proposing, and looking at the Ugandan experience. So I just wanted to add that to the submission that the colleague from the coalition had. But I'm sure the unit being is actually going to be, we are currently being financed by the UK government for the next, for the 2 years, and now the EU is coming in for the next 2 years. But ultimately, this is going to become a department. It's going to be part of government for maybe in the next 5 years. So we know that sustainability in the long term is assured. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting insights, Dennis. And apologies. I would have so many more questions to you, but also a bit being conscious about the time and seeing a lot of questions coming in the chat, which is great to see. And I really would like to give the opportunity to answer also those. Maybe let's jump and close this panel discussion with one final question that I would like to ask all of our panelists, really just to answer in a minute, that we can then move to the questions we have in the question pane. So just looking really in the future, how do you envision the roles, the evolving roles of the CFUs? What, from your perspective as a government, as a development partner, as an institution, would see the most important factors to be strengthened and to put a focus on, that the CFUs can fulfill those? Maybe let's start with you, Adrian, hearing yours. So it's just really 1 minute, if you can do, please.
Okay, thanks. I'll try to stick to 1 minute for such an important question. No, first of all, I do really think that CFUs or climate units will become more and more important, and I would definitely encourage the various countries to start thinking or continue thinking about establishing some sort of a climate unit. I fully agree with what my colleague Dennis was saying from Uganda about the importance of investing in human resources. I think this is a key thing. We have floated this idea before, but maybe as partners and using platforms like NDC Partnership and the Coalition and others, we should think of developing some sort of a certified professional program that staff members of ministries could follow on a part-time basis on the job. I would also definitely encourage people to think beyond access to finance. I think access to finance creates this idea that there is somewhere a pot of finance available and it's just a matter of trying to access it. But I think that the roles and responsibilities about mobilizing climate finance are much broader, and we should also look at how ministries of finance can use fiscal policy making, budgeting, engaging with the financial sector and the private sector to channel funding, financing towards climate action. And then maybe as a very last comment, if I may, because I think for the participants in Africa, it's also good to mention that this year's Africa Climate Summit, which was decided to take place in Ethiopia later this year in September, there will probably be also a big focus on the involvement of ministries of economy and finance. And in this context, the former CEO of the Africa Climate Summit, Mr. Joseph Nganga, is already engaging with various partners to see how we can shape an interesting agenda around this topic. So I'll leave it at that. I probably took more than 1 minute. Apologies for that.
Yeah, many thanks, Adrian. Aoife, just really very brief.
Thank you. Yes, very briefly. Yeah, really echoing what Adrian said. I think, yeah, several of our members are establishing climate finance units. So through the guide and our capability assessment framework tool, we want to continue supporting our members in that and kind of supporting peer exchange, helping members connect with partners. So we stand ready to support finance ministries who want to set up their climate finance unit. And I think on topic of where these units might go, I think one thing we hear from many of our members, we just had our annual deputies meeting a few weeks ago where we had many of our members have these kind of discussions, is that adaptation is really a very important topic. And I think it could be really interesting to see how can these units help mobilize more financing for adaptation specifically. So I think that would be interesting to see how that evolves. And of course, that's also something we're thinking about and hope to support in as well.
Thank you, Aoife. Mr. Sohail, how do you see what to focus on in the next 5 years in Bangladesh?
Thank you very much once again. And a special announcement I would like to give. That is in July in Dhaka, we are going to organize the International Climate Finance Conference, having 20 most vulnerable countries at the same time. Our coalition, Climate Finance Ministers Coalition, CVF, V20, with the UNFCCC, 5 instruments, the financial architectures, the top officials, and with the OECD representation, with the G7, G20, and some big conglomerates and the banks, global banks, they will participate. And you will be happy to know that the UN Secretary General is today, within a couple of hours, he is coming in Dhaka and today. And we are eagerly waiting to receive him, and we'll invite him for International Climate Finance Conference to be the chief guest over there. So, dear colleagues, for next 5 years, we have many plans, but initially, within the next 5 months, we have a plan to organize the International Climate Finance Conference. In course of time, other plans we will unfold. Thank you.
Sounds great, Mr. Sohail. Dennis, what are your plans for the CFU the next 5 years?
Before I give you the plans for the next 5 years, I just want to say that CFUs are a winning model when it comes to climate financing, at least for the Ugandan case. The next 5 years, we're looking at how we can go into innovative financing. We have actually some innovative financing in disaster risk management that actually we are starting with local banks and international banks, and it's something that we want to share with other countries. I think the next 5 years is increasing advocacy within, because we have been seeing civil society, the other development partners, and then other partners coming in and telling us, you need to do this to mobilize resources. Now it should be the CFUs driving in internal changes. So I think in the next 5 years, we shall actually even see more improvement in use of our own resources within. And the next 5 years is just to call on the partners to always, including the NDC Partnership, to help us in our drive to use the CFUs to increase climate finance mobilization. Thank you.
Is
Thank
there
you,
one
Dennis.
request? Just 10 seconds. That is, innovative climate financing will be one of the very important focus in the International Climate Finance Conference. Dear colleagues, if you have any innovative idea of innovative financing, I mean regarding the new modalities, please share with us so that we can showcase the thing, give you the opportunity to speak before the global forum. Thank you.
Thanks so much for this addition. I enjoyed a lot this panel discussion. Many thanks for all our panelists. We have very little time left for the questions, although we received already a lot of questions. I will now select two, but I really would like to encourage you that also after this webinar, Mr. Sohail already shared his email address, but please feel free to reach out to us. We are very happy to facilitate, to make the connection with you and the panelists and also other participants of this webinar. So there is one question I wanted to bring to our panelists' attention. This is from Somalia. They are asking, how can we integrate the concerns of countries in conflict and fragile situations, such as Somalia, into the CFU creation process? Who would like to take that one?
Sorry, I went off. Can you please raise the question again?
Apologies, Dennis, for me, the line was dropping a lot. I didn't understand. But if others did, then just please come in.
Yes, hi Esther. Maybe I can quickly comment on that. Because Enable, the Belgian Development Agency, we do work in quite a few fragile contexts on the continent. Unfortunately, we're not present in Somalia, but I think we would be happy to exchange some experiences and maybe via call to share some of the experiences we had in Mozambique, but also in other countries in our support to ministries of economy and finance. And I would also definitely invite the government of Somalia to maybe consider partaking or participating in the Africa Climate Summit later this year. And as I mentioned before, we will probably set up some thematic work streams. So we're discussing that in support of the permanent secretariat of the Africa Climate Summit in Kenya. We're looking at setting up some thematic working groups around topics related to climate finance units as well. So happy to be in touch.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I don't know, Dennis, if the line is now better or if any other panelists would like to answer this question. If not, then let's move to the next question. So the next question that we received was, can panelists share how they have mobilized resources for climate finance, either domestically or from external sources? Any examples of how much has been raised and lessons from that? Here, I think we would like to, of course, hear from all of you, but Mr. Sohail, you already started to mention this a bit. So now this is maybe the time to elaborate more. And I think there's particularly a lot of interest in general regarding how to engage more the private sector, how to mobilize also private sector financing.
Thank you. I was practically thinking that I will request you to give me the floor because, the BCDP, Bangladesh Climate Development Partnership, this is a very fantastic platform. It has got 4 sub-working group. One is for domestic finance, what the question already asked. Another is for foreign finance. Another is for policy support. Another one is project preparation and implementation. So what happened that for domestic finance, our finance division, under the finance ministry, there are 4 divisions. One is finance division. They are to prepare the budget, national budget, and they have the climate budget reporting mechanism. And over there, it is all the ministries who are spending the money, government money, that fund is being reflected in the reporting and mechanism. So they are in charge. That sub-working group is led by finance division. And over there, some other members are there. So for domestic finance, the private sector is there, for other ministries are there. So they can join together. And for the foreign finance, ERD is we are the lead. We are the lead. We have other members, say Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forest, they are the environment. But for the policy support, say for preparing the NAP, preparing the NDC, preparing the national climate policies, the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forest, they are the lead. So this important works, charter of duties have been divided in 4 groups. So categorically mentioned which division or which ministry is in charge of what. And as the development partners are also the board member, so they are well aware of who are doing what. So say Ministry of Youth, they want to take a project, a climate project, say Ministry of Youth. So what is there? They must have the fiscal space. They will ask the money from the Ministry of Finance, the finance division, and they will allocate the money. They will allocate the money. If they can't, if they feel like the foreign assistance is needed, say 70% from the government fund, 30% foreign assistance is needed. In that case, they will refer the case to the finance division. At the same time, as foreign financing is needed, they will refer the case to us. So that's why the coordination is clearly organized, done.
Thanks so much. I know we are running out of time, but still I would like to give the opportunity to our panelists to answer this question very briefly if someone would like to come in. I know, Dennis, you also mentioned already a lot the mobilization, the finance mobilization role of CFU, and CFCMA also has a strong focus on private sector engagement. So just very briefly, if any of you would like to come in, then we can still do that before closing the webinar.
Thank you. I think for the time the CFU has been in operation, we mobilized resources from a number of partners, and also financing mechanisms. Actually, we have quite a lot of financing from the GCF coming in. Some projects have been approved, close to $110 million coming in. We have some from the adaptation funds, and then the GCF, obviously, our allocation under the GF8 window, but also we have actually financing that is coming through the climate action window under the Federal Bank, also from the German government, and then we also have the work that we've been doing with NDC Partnership on the private sector. So we see the matching between the investors and then the private sector. We are seeing some financing also coming in close to $7 million, and then there's also a possibility of having more financing coming in. So we in total, actually, for the time we've been in operation, we have mobilized close to to 400 million, and we have in the pipeline close to $190 million in terms of financing for the last 2 years that we've been in operation. So we are looking at also other innovative ways, like I said, the disaster risk financing that we're working with other private banks. So the number of ways we utilize the resources of that is what is also.
Thank you again. So with that, we are closing the panel discussion, but please stay with us for a few more minutes, because for the closing remarks, I would like to hand over the floor to Toby Roycroft from the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, who is also our partner and donor, and actually who made this webinar possible today through financing the work of the Center for Accessing to Climate Finance. So with that, I would like to thank again our panelists for this very interesting discussion, and also the participants for being so active and asking so many questions. Please be in touch with us that we can follow up on those and make the connections. Toby, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you all. Particularly an excellent range of panelists and excellent contributions to such a diverse range of countries. Great to have such a widespread participation today. As Esther mentioned, by way of introduction, I work on access to climate finance on behalf of the UK's Office for Foreign Affairs and Development, FCDO. We're very pleased to support this work through NDCP and our kind of collective efforts to deliver the principles and recommendations for improved access to climate finance published by the Taskforce on Access to Climate Finance, which provides an umbrella for a lot of this work. By way of wrap up, I just want to kind of bring together some kind of common threads that we've heard through the conversation today. I'll keep things very quick, as I know we're running out of time. Firstly, we heard about the importance of climate finance units having a clear mandate and authority, often being embedded within ministries of finance, but that's context specific. We heard great examples for how this has been achieved through Dennis's work in Uganda. We've also heard about the role of units providing a platform or bridging mechanism to coordinate on a whole of government basis, such as the excellent work done with the International Climate Finance Cell in Bangladesh. Secondly, the importance of capacity building in climate finance, equipping teams, domestic teams with the right skills and knowledge to effectively mobilize, manage, and ensure that climate projects are both efficient and effective. Again, we heard a number of examples around knowledge sharing and training to build up that domestic skills base. Lastly, the importance of long-term sustainability, institutionalization cannot be kind of overstated, whether that's through kind of the legalization of structures, the introduction of frameworks and practices. We heard about some of that great work in Mozambique, which has led to long-term strategies and policies being in place. I will stop there and thank everybody for today. I look forward to coming again and hearing from all of you as we continue this journey together, hear how we've mapping against those 5-year development plans we've spoken about on one of those final questions. I will stop and close and thank everybody for their participation today. I think it's been a really fruitful discussion. Thanks.